I discovered my dentist has been unnecessarily drilling healthy teeth for 5 years to commit insurance fraud, and 40 other patients are coming forward. The X-ray tech's hand was shaking when she turned the monitor toward me. I'm not supposed to show patients this, she whispered, glancing at the closed door. But you need to see what Dr. Whitmore did to your teeth. On the screen were 2 sets of dental X-rays, dated 6 months apart. The first showed perfectly healthy molars. The second showed the same teeth riddled with dark spots and 3 silver fillings that hadn't existed before. My tongue instinctively probed the left side of my mouth where those fillings sat, the ones Dr. Whitmore had urgently drilled 3 weeks ago, the ones he'd said were deep cavities that could have caused serious infection if we'd waited any longer. The tech, whose name tag read Amy Nguyen, RDA, pulled up another image. This is from today, your right side. See these teeth? She pointed to 4 molars that looked pristine on the screen. He scheduled you for fillings on all 4 next week, but there's nothing wrong with them. I'd been going to Whitmore Dental Care for 5 years, ever since I moved to Portland for a project management job at a tech startup. The office was in a modern building near the Pearl District, all glass walls and minimalist furniture, with a reception area that smelled like eucalyptus and played ambient music that was probably supposed to be calming. Dr. Jeremy Whitmore had great reviews online, accepted my insurance, and had that reassuring combination of authority and friendliness that made you trust him immediately. He was maybe 50, with silver hair and expensive-looking glasses, the kind of dentist who called you chief and made small talk about the trailblazers while his hands were in your mouth. For 5 years, I'd never questioned him. I'd been a model patient, showing up every 6 months for cleanings, following up on every filling he recommended, paying my copays without complaint. My previous dentist in Seattle had found maybe 2 cavities in 10 years. Whitmore found 3 or 4 at every visit. I'd thought my oral hygiene had gotten worse, maybe stress from work, too much coffee, not flossing enough. I'd felt guilty about it, actually, like I was failing at basic adulting. The reason I was at this new dental office, Northwest Dental Associates, was almost embarrassingly mundane. My company had switched insurance providers in January, and Whitmore's practice wasn't in the new network. I'd been annoyed about it, actually, having to find a new dentist after 5 years. I'd called Northwest Dental because they were close to my apartment, got an appointment for a routine cleaning, expected nothing more than a lecture about flossing and maybe 1 cavity. Instead, Dr. Lisa Pham, a Vietnamese-American dentist in her late 30s who'd graduated from OHSU School of Dentistry, had spent an unusually long time examining my mouth. She'd asked me detailed questions about my dental history, taken comprehensive X-rays, and then left the room for almost 20 minutes. When she came back, Amy the tech was with her, and they both had expressions I couldn't quite read. Dr. Pham had pulled up my X-rays and started asking questions that seemed oddly specific. How many fillings did your previous dentist say you needed? Did he ever show you the X-rays before drilling? Did you ever get second opinions? I'd answered honestly, increasingly confused about why it mattered. Then she'd asked Amy to pull up something else, and that's when the shaking hand moment happened. I don't understand, I said, staring at the screen. My mouth felt dry. Are you saying these fillings were unnecessary? Doctor. Pham sat down on the rolling stool, her expression careful. I'm saying that based on these X-rays from 6 months ago, which you said came from Dr. Whitmore's office, there was no clinical indication for the restorative work performed on these 3 teeth. And based on today's X-rays, there's no clinical indication for the 4 fillings he's scheduled you for next week. She paused. How many fillings has Dr. Whitmore performed on you over the past 5 years? I had to think about it. Maybe 12? 15? I don't know exactly. She pulled up a form on her computer, clicked through several screens. According to the records you had transferred, he's billed your insurance for 23 fillings, 2 crowns, and 1 root canal over 5 years. That's on 32 adult teeth, assuming you had your wisdom teeth removed. The room felt smaller suddenly. That seems like a lot? That's extremely unusual, Doctor. Pham said quietly. Especially given that your oral health appears excellent. No signs of decay, no gum disease, good bone structure. You said you've been experiencing some sensitivity? I nodded. The left side of my mouth had been sensitive to cold since those last 3 fillings, the ones Whitmore had done 3 weeks ago. He'd said that was normal, that it would fade. Sensitivity after fillings can occur, Dr. Pham said, but I'd like to examine those fillings more closely if you're comfortable with that. She spent the next 10 minutes probing the left side of my mouth with a tiny mirror and that sharp hook tool dentists use. Her frown deepened. Amy, can you note in the chart that the fillings on teeth 14, 15, and 18 show signs of overpreparation? The margins are rough, and there's visible damage to adjacent tooth structure. She looked at me. I'm going to be direct with you because I think you need to know. The work performed on these teeth appears to be aggressive and unnecessary. The cavities he claimed were there either didn't exist or were so minor that they could have been managed with fluoride treatment and monitoring. He removed healthy tooth structure. My hands gripped the armrests of the dental chair. Why would he do that? Dr. Pham's expression was sympathetic but firm. I can't speak to motivation, but I can tell you that you should contact your insurance company and request a full audit of the claims submitted by Dr. Whitmore's office. I left Northwest Dental Associates in a daze, clutching a printed copy of my x-rays and a detailed written report from Dr. Pham that used phrases like lack of clinical indication and overly aggressive treatment and potential insurance fraud. The afternoon sun was too bright. Traffic on Burnside felt too loud. I sat in my car for 15 minutes before I could process enough to drive. My hands kept returning to my mouth, tongue probing those fillings on the left side, the ones that still ached with cold sensitivity. I'd trusted him. For 5 years, I'd opened my mouth and let him drill into my body, believing every word he said. The violation felt physical, intimate in a way that made my skin crawl. I thought about every appointment, every time he'd pointed to an x-ray and said, "See this dark spot here?" I'd seen nothing but trusted he knew better. How many of those dark spots had been nothing at all? How many times had he looked at healthy teeth and decided they were worth $3,000 in insurance claims? My phone buzzed with a text from my girlfriend, Kieran, asking if I wanted to grab dinner. I texted back that I needed to talk to her about something weird, and could we meet at the apartment instead. At home, I spread the x-rays and report across the kitchen table. Kieran, who worked as a paralegal at a corporate law firm downtown, put on her reading glasses and studied everything with the methodical focus she brought to contract reviews. After 10 minutes, she looked up. "This is bad, like potentially criminal bad. Do you have documentation of everything Whitmore charged you?" I pulled up my insurance portal on my laptop. We spent the next hour going through 5 years of dental claims. The pattern was obvious once you looked for it. Every 6-month checkup resulted in 3 to 5 new fillings. The charges escalated over time. The most recent visit, 3 weeks ago, had billed my insurance $2,800 for 3 deep posterior restorations that my policy had covered 80% of, leaving me with a $560 copay I'd put on my credit card. Kieran's jaw tightened as she scrolled through the claims. "This is systematic. Look at the timing, every visit, multiple procedures, and the amounts are just under the threshold that would trigger an automatic audit." She zoomed in on one claim from 18 months ago. "Look at this. He billed for 4 fillings in one visit, but the coding suggests they were all in different quadrants of your mouth. That's unusual. Most decay patterns cluster based on diet and hygiene habits. Having 4 cavities appear simultaneously in 4 separate areas suggests either catastrophic oral health collapse, which clearly didn't happen, or he was fabricating." She pulled out her phone and started typing. "I'm texting my friend Jenna. She does insurance defense litigation. This is her area." While we waited, I kept digging through the portal. There were procedure codes I didn't understand, technical dental terminology that meant nothing to me. But the numbers told a story even without translation. Every 6 months, like clockwork, cleaning, exam, x-rays, followed immediately by multiple restorative procedures, sometimes performed the same day as the exam, sometimes scheduled for the following week. The copays alone had cost me over $4,800. When I factored in what insurance had paid, the total was north of $32,000, for a mouth that, according to Dr. Pham, had been perfectly healthy the entire time. While we waited for Jenna to respond, I did what anyone does when they're spiraling. I started Googling. Dental insurance fraud brought up more results than I expected. Articles about dentists who'd been caught billing for unnecessary procedures, drilling healthy teeth, even performing work on sedated patients who'd only consented to cleanings. There was a case in California where a dentist had defrauded insurance companies of over $3 million by performing unnecessary root canals. Another in Florida where 42 patients had sued after discovering their children's teeth had been unnecessarily drilled. My stomach turned. I thought about all those times I'd sat in Whitmore's chair, trusting him, believing him when he pointed to shadows on x-rays and said, "We need to take care of this before it gets worse." Jenna called 20 minutes later. Kieran put her on speaker. "From what you're describing, you need to file a complaint with the Oregon Board of Dentistry immediately," Jenna said. Her voice was crisp, professional. "You also need to file a complaint with your insurance company's fraud division, and you should seriously consider contacting the state attorney general's office. This isn't just civil fraud. It could be criminal." The next morning, I called the Oregon Board of Dentistry at exactly 9 when they opened. The intake coordinator, a woman who introduced herself as Patricia O'Connor, listened to my explanation with increasing attention. "I need you to email me everything you just described," she said. "The x-rays, the second opinion report, your insurance records. We take these complaints very seriously." She gave me a case number and explained the investigation process. "I can't tell you specifics about ongoing investigations, but I can say that you're not the first person to contact us about Dr. Whitmore's practice this month." My heart rate spiked. "How many others?" "I can't disclose that, but I'm going to have our chief investigator contact you directly. His name is Robert Finley. He has 32 years of experience in dental regulation." After I hung up, I filed a fraud report through my insurance company's website, uploading all the documentation. Then I did something I immediately questioned, but couldn't stop myself from doing. I searched for Dr. Whitmore's practice on social media and patient review sites. The reviews were mostly positive, 4 and 5 stars, people praising his gentle touch and modern office. But when I filtered to show only the 1 and 2-star reviews, a different pattern emerged. Multiple people complained about excessive fillings, aggressive treatment plans, surprise charges. One review from 8 months ago said, Went here for 5 years and every single visit he found multiple cavities. Got a second opinion and the new dentist said my teeth were fine. Feels like I was scammed. I screenshot that review and several others. Then I noticed something in the comments section of one review. A woman named Priya Kapoor had written, "If Dr. Whitmore performed unnecessary dental work on you, please contact me. I'm gathering information for a potential class action. My email is pkapoor.dental@gmail.com. I stared at that comment for a long time. Then I opened my email and started typing. I explained everything: the x-rays, the second opinion, the insurance records, the 5 years of aggressive treatment. I attached all my documentation. I hit send before I could overthink it. Priya responded within 2 hours. "Thank you for reaching out. I'm a dental hygienist who worked at Whitmore Dental Care for 3 years until I was fired in December for questioning his treatment plans. I've been in contact with 38 former patients who all have similar stories. I'm working with an attorney who specializes in medical malpractice and fraud. Would you be willing to meet?" We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in Northeast Portland on Friday afternoon. I took a half day off work, telling my boss I had a medical appointment, which wasn't entirely a lie. The coffee shop was one of those converted warehouse spaces with exposed brick and too many succulents. Priya was there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a laptop and several thick folders. She was in her early 30s, with long dark hair and exhausted eyes that suggested she hadn't been sleeping well. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "And I'm sorry this happened to you. I'm sorry I didn't do more to stop it sooner." We sat down, and she opened one of the folders. Inside were printed patient charts, highlighted and annotated in multiple colors. Post-it notes covered the margins with her handwriting, dates and procedure codes and question marks. "I started noticing the pattern about a year into working there," Priya said. "Dr. Whitmore would perform exams and find cavities that I hadn't seen during the cleaning. At first, I thought maybe I was missing things, that I needed more training. But then I started paying closer attention to the x-rays. He'd point to completely normal tooth structure and claim it was decay. When I questioned him privately, he'd get defensive, say I wasn't qualified to diagnose." She paused, took a sip of her coffee. The breaking point was a patient named Leo Ramos, 8-year-old kid, came in for his first checkup. Beautiful teeth, no cavities. I'd stake my license on it. Dr. Whitmore examined him, came out, told the mother the kid needed 6 fillings. 6. On baby teeth that were going to fall out anyway. The mother was panicking, asking if her son was going to lose his teeth. Whitmore assured her we'd take care of it, scheduled the kid for sedation dentistry the following week. Her hands clenched around her coffee cup. I pulled the x-rays after they left. There was nothing there. Nothing. I confronted Whitmore in his office. He told me I was overstepping, that he had 20 years of experience and I needed to trust his clinical judgment. I told him I'd worked with pediatric patients for 6 years and those teeth were healthy. He told me if I questioned him again, I'd be looking for a new job. "But I've been a hygienist for 9 years. I know what decay looks like." She pulled out before and after x-rays that looked disturbingly similar to mine. He had a system. He'd identify patients with good insurance, comprehensive coverage, high annual maximums. He'd schedule them for aggressive treatment plans, usually 3 to 5 fillings per visit, spacing them out so it didn't look suspicious. He'd use medical terminology and fear tactics, phrases like, "If we don't treat this now, you'll need a root canal," or "This cavity is close to the nerve." Most patients trusted him because he's good at playing the authoritative expert. My coffee tasted like ash. "Why didn't you report him sooner?" Priya's expression tightened. "I tried. I filed a complaint with the Board of Dentistry in October. They said they'd investigate, but nothing happened. Meanwhile, Dr. Whitmore figured out it was me who'd filed the complaint. He has connections at the board. Someone tipped him off. He fired me in December, claimed I was not a good cultural fit for the practice. I couldn't prove retaliation because Oregon is an at-will employment state." She opened her laptop and pulled up a spreadsheet. "After I was fired, I started reaching out to former patients whose charts I remembered, people who'd had extensive work done that seemed questionable. 38 people have agreed to share their records with me. When you include yourself, that's 39. The total amount billed to insurance companies for these 39 patients over 5 years is approximately $1.3 million. The estimated amount of unnecessary work is being calculated by 2 independent dentists who are reviewing the x-rays and charts." She turned the laptop toward me. The spreadsheet listed patient initials, dates of service, procedures performed, and amounts charged. The numbers were staggering. Some patients had over $50,000 in dental work over 5 years. "There's something else," Priya said quietly. "Dr. Whitmore has been under investigation by the DEA for the past 6 months. I blinked. "The DEA? For drugs?" "For improper prescribing of sedation medications. He was sedating patients for routine procedures that don't require sedation, billing insurance for the sedation, and then performing work the patients hadn't consented to while they were unconscious. I have 2 patients who only agreed to cleanings and woke up with multiple fillings." The coffee shop felt too warm. My shirt stuck to my back. "That's assault." "That's one of the charges being considered," Priya said. "The attorney I'm working with is Daniel Kowalski. He's a partner at Novak & Associates. They specialize in medical malpractice and class action suits. He's been building a case for 3 months. With your documentation and testimony, we now have enough evidence to move forward." She slid a business card across the table. "Will you join the lawsuit?" I picked up the card. Daniel Kowalski, J.D., partner, Medical Malpractice Division, licensed in Oregon since 2008. The office address was downtown. What happens if I say yes? You'd sign a retainer agreement with the law firm. You'd provide all your documentation, your testimony, potentially a deposition. The lawsuit would be filed within the next month. It would become public record. Dr. Whitmore would be notified. The case would probably take a year, maybe 2. If we win, you'd be compensated for damages, both for the unnecessary dental work and for emotional distress. She paused. But I need to be honest with you. This won't be easy. Whitmore will fight back. He has money for good lawyers. He'll try to discredit every patient who comes forward. The process will be stressful and invasive. You'd have to relive this over and over in depositions and possibly court testimony. I thought about those 5 years of sitting in his chair. The needles, the drilling, the bills. The way he'd made me feel like my teeth were falling apart, like I was failing at basic hygiene. The sensitivity I still felt on the left side of my mouth from fillings I'd never needed. I'll do it, I said. What do I need to sign? I met with Daniel Kowalski the following Monday in a conference room on the 18th floor of a glass tower downtown. He was in his mid-40s, built like someone who ran marathons, with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. With him was his associate, Catherine Lee, a Korean-American attorney who'd graduated from Lewis and Clark Law School and specialized in insurance fraud cases. They had my documentation spread across the table, augmented by reports from 2 independent dental experts they'd hired. Dr. Rachel Thornton, a forensic odontologist with credentials from the American Board of Forensic Odontology, had reviewed my x-rays and provided a detailed analysis. Her report used terms like iatrogenic damage, overpreparation of tooth structure, and no radiographic evidence of carious lesions. The second expert, Dr. James Okonkwo, had practiced general dentistry for 28 years and now worked primarily as an expert witness in malpractice cases. His report was more blunt. The procedures performed were not only unnecessary but harmful. Healthy enamel and dentin were removed without medical justification. This constitutes substandard care and potential fraud. Your case is strong, Daniel said, walking me through each piece of evidence. Dr. Pham's report is detailed and damning. Your insurance records show a clear pattern. The x-rays provide visual proof. Combined with the testimony from 38 other patients and Priya's insider knowledge, we have a solid foundation for both civil fraud and negligence claims. Catherine pulled up a PowerPoint presentation on the screen at the end of the conference room. We're pursuing this as a class action lawsuit. The named plaintiffs will be you and 5 others who have the most compelling documentation. The class will include all patients who received treatment from Dr. Whitmore between 2019 and 2024 and can demonstrate that the treatment was medically unnecessary. She clicked to the next slide. We're also coordinating with the Oregon Department of Justice. The Attorney General's office has opened a criminal investigation into Dr. Whitmore for healthcare fraud, identity theft, and insurance fraud. The DEA investigation is being folded into the larger case. If the criminal charges proceed, he could face federal prison time. The meeting lasted 3 hours. I signed documents until my hand cramped. Retainer agreement, high-pay releases, authorization for them to request all my dental records from every dentist I'd ever seen. They explained the timeline, the likely defense strategies Whitmore's lawyers would use, the possibility of settlement versus going to trial. One more thing, Daniel said as we were wrapping up. We need to prepare you for the fact that this will become public. When we file the lawsuit, media will pick it up. Local news at minimum, possibly regional or national depending on how the story develops. You'll be identified as one of the lead plaintiffs. Your name will be in court documents. You might be contacted by journalists. He paused. Are you prepared for that? I thought about it. If it stops him from doing this to other people, yes. Catherine smiled. Good. Because we're going to make sure everyone knows what he did. The lawsuit was filed on a Friday in early March. By Monday morning, it was headline news. Portland dentist faces class action lawsuit alleging insurance fraud and unnecessary procedures on dozens of patients. The Oregonian ran a front-page story with my name and photo, along with quotes from Daniel and Priya. By noon, 3 local TV stations had requested interviews. By evening, the story had been picked up by regional outlets across the Pacific Northwest. By the end of the week, it was national news. CNN ran a segment. NPR did a story about dental fraud and patient vulnerability. The lawsuit's filing triggered a cascade of other consequences. Dr. Whitmore's office released a statement through his attorney, a high-powered defense lawyer named Gregory Ashford, who'd represented several prominent white-collar criminals. The statement was carefully worded, denying all allegations, claiming the lawsuit was baseless and motivated by financial opportunism, asserting that Dr. Whitmore has always provided care consistent with the highest standards of dental practice. The statement included phrases like, "We look forward to vigorously defending against these meritless claims," and Dr. Whitmore's reputation speaks for itself. Reading it made me angry in a way I hadn't expected. Not the hot, immediate anger, but something colder and more determined. He wasn't just denying what he'd done, he was trying to paint us as liars and opportunists. The victims were being reframed as aggressors. It was a calculated PR strategy, and it might have worked if we hadn't had the evidence we had. The Oregon Board of Dentistry, apparently spurred into action by the media attention and public outcry, announced an emergency suspension of Dr. Whitmore's dental license pending a full investigation. The state attorney general's office confirmed they were pursuing criminal charges. The FBI's healthcare fraud unit opened an investigation into whether the fraud crossed state lines, since Whitmore had patients who lived in Washington and commuted to Portland for treatment. And more patients came forward. Within 2 weeks of the lawsuit becoming public, the law firm had been contacted by 63 additional people who believed they'd been victims of Whitmore's fraud. Some of their stories were heartbreaking. A single mother named Claire Donovan, who'd put $5,000 on credit cards to pay for her daughter's urgent dental work that another dentist later confirmed had been completely unnecessary. The debt had destroyed her credit score and forced her to take a second job. An elderly man named Harold Yoshida, who'd had 15 fillings done over 3 years, causing him chronic pain and difficulty eating, only to discover from a new dentist that most of the fillings were failing because they'd been placed in healthy teeth, and the trauma had caused real decay to develop. A college student named Marcus Chen, I need to use a different name. A college student named Thomas Brennan, who'd been sedated for what he thought was a wisdom tooth extraction and woke up with 6 additional fillings he'd never consented to, fillings that had maxed out his parents' insurance coverage and left them with $3,000 in bills. Within 2 weeks of the lawsuit becoming public, the law firm had been contacted by 63 additional people who believed they'd been victims of Whitmore's fraud. Catherine called me with updates every few days. We're now at 102 patients total. The estimated fraud amount is over $3.6 million. We've had to bring on 2 additional associates just to process the volume of new plaintiffs. The media attention intensified. I did interviews with 3 local TV stations, carefully staying on script with the talking points Daniel had prepared. I explained what had happened in clear, unemotional terms. I emphasized that this wasn't just about money. It was about trust and accountability and making sure this never happened to anyone else. I showed the X-rays on camera. The contrast between the before and after images was powerful, even for people with no dental expertise. You could see what Dr. Pham had described, healthy tooth structure transformed into filled teeth that hadn't needed filling. The interviews were harder than I'd expected. Sitting under studio lights, talking about how I'd been violated, how someone I'd trusted had drilled into my body unnecessarily for profit. It felt exposing in a way I hadn't anticipated. After the first interview aired, I started getting recognized. A barista at my regular coffee shop said she'd seen me on the news and thanked me for coming forward. A guy at the gym asked if I was that dentist fraud guy and told me his own horror story about a dentist in Beaverton. My parents called from Arizona, worried and supportive in equal measure. My dad, a retired accountant who'd always been skeptical of doctors, said, "I always told you to get second opinions." My mom asked if I was okay, really okay, and I had to admit I wasn't sure. The violation felt more real the more I talked about it. At work, my manager pulled me aside to ask if I needed time off. "You're getting a lot of attention," she said carefully. "If it's affecting your ability to focus, we can adjust your workload." I assured her I was fine, but the truth was, I was struggling. Every time my phone buzzed with a news alert or a message from Catherine with an update, my heart rate spiked. I'd developed a nervous habit of running my tongue over those fillings on the left side, a constant reminder of what had been done to me. But the response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people reached out through social media, sharing their own stories of dental fraud, thanking me for speaking up. Several dentists contacted the law firm offering to provide expert testimony. An investigative journalist from a healthcare watchdog organization started working on a longer piece about systemic fraud in the dental industry. In early April, 6 weeks after the lawsuit was filed, Dr. Whitmore's attorneys requested a meeting to discuss settlement. Daniel called me the day after the meeting. They're offering $2.8 million for the entire class, plus agreement to permanently surrender his dental license and not contest the criminal charges. He paused. It's a strong offer, but it's not enough. We're countering with $5.2 million, full admission of wrongdoing, and cooperation with ongoing investigations. The negotiation dragged on for 3 weeks. During that time, more information emerged about the scope of Whitmore's operation. The FBI's investigation had uncovered a complex web of financial arrangements. Whitmore had relationships with several dental supply companies that gave him kickbacks for using their products. He'd been billing insurance companies for premium materials, ceramic and composite fillings, while actually using cheaper alternatives and pocketing the difference. He'd set up a shell company that provided consulting services to his practice, a way to funnel money and hide income from taxes. The criminal investigation expanded beyond just the unnecessary procedures. Money laundering charges were being considered. Tax evasion. The deeper investigators dug, the more rot they found. Catherine kept me updated on every development. The forensic accountants have traced over $7.3 million in fraudulent billing over 8 years, she told me during one phone call. And that's just what they've found so far. The actual number could be higher. Meanwhile, the impact on Whitmore's personal life became visible. His wife filed for divorce, a detail that made local news. Several of his colleagues at the Dental Association, where he'd served on the ethics committee, ironically, publicly distanced themselves from him. The building that housed his practice put it up for lease, his staff scattered to other dental offices, some of them also facing scrutiny for what they might have known or suspected. Meanwhile, the criminal case was moving forward independently. In late April, a grand jury indicted Dr. Jeremy Whitmore on 43 counts of healthcare fraud, 26 counts of insurance fraud, and 18 counts of assault for the sedation cases where he'd performed unauthorized procedures. The indictment detailed a scheme that had operated for at least 7 years, possibly longer, involving fraudulent billing to Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance companies. The charges carried a potential sentence of over 100 years in prison if convicted on all counts, though the federal sentencing guidelines would likely result in something closer to 15 to 20 years. The indictment made national news again. Dr. Phil devoted a segment to it. Dental schools started using the case in ethics courses. In May, we reached a settlement. $5.4 million for the 102 verified victims in the class action, with provisions for additional victims who came forward within the next year to join the settlement pool. Whitmore agreed to surrender his dental license permanently, to never practice dentistry in any capacity ever again, and to cooperate fully with all criminal investigations. The settlement included a detailed admission of wrongdoing, a signed statement acknowledging that he had performed medically unnecessary dental procedures on patients over multiple years for financial gain. He admitted drilling healthy teeth, filing false insurance claims, and betraying the trust of his patients. It wasn't enough, but it was something. My portion of the settlement, after legal fees and distribution among the class members, came to $38,000. It covered the co-pays I'd paid over 5 years, the cost of having several of Whitmore's fillings redone by Dr. Pham after they started failing, and a small amount for emotional distress. The money felt dirty somehow, like accepting it meant putting a price on the violation. But Catherine reminded me it wasn't just about money. Every dollar he pays out is an acknowledgement that what he did was wrong, and more importantly, he'll never practice again. He can't hurt anyone else. The criminal trial was scheduled for September. The prosecution had a mountain of evidence, testimony from over 100 patients, documentation from Priya and other staff members who'd worked at his practice, expert analysis of x-rays proving the procedures were unnecessary, financial records showing the insurance fraud. In August, 3 weeks before trial, Whitmore's defense attorneys negotiated a plea deal. He pled guilty to 20 counts of healthcare fraud and 8 counts of insurance fraud. In exchange, the assault charges were dropped. The sentence recommendation was reduced. On a Thursday morning in October, I sat in a federal courtroom in downtown Portland and watched Jeremy Whitmore stand before Judge Catherine Reynolds, a federal judge with 23 years on the bench, appointed in 2001. He looked smaller than I remembered, older, wearing an expensive suit that hung slightly loose on his frame. His silver hair was neatly trimmed. His expression was blank. The courtroom was packed. I counted at least 30 other victims in attendance, people whose faces I recognized from the support group meetings Catherine had organized. Priya sat 3 rows behind me. Kieran was beside me, her hand gripping mine. Judge Reynolds read through the charges, asked if he understood what he was pleading guilty to, confirmed he was doing so voluntarily. "Yes, Your Honor," he said, his voice steady. There was no tremor, no visible emotion. He could have been confirming a dental appointment. Then came the victim impact statements. The prosecution had selected 5 patients to speak, including me. I'd written my statement weeks ago, revised it a dozen times, practiced it in front of Kieran until I could get through it without my voice breaking. But sitting there, waiting for my name to be called, watching the first victim take the stand, a woman named Rita Guzman, who described how Whitmore had convinced her he needed to extract 4 healthy teeth, I felt my carefully constructed composure cracking. Rita's voice shook as she explained how she'd lived with chronic pain and difficulty eating for 2 years, how she'd spent $18,000 on implants to replace the teeth Whitmore had unnecessarily removed, how she'd developed anxiety around medical professionals that required therapy to address. When she finished, the second victim spoke, then the third. Each story was a variation on the same theme: trust exploited, pain inflicted, lives disrupted, financial devastation, medical trauma, the erosion of something fundamental about believing that the person in the white coat was there to help you. When my name was called, I walked to the podium, unfolded my paper, and read in a voice I fought to keep steady. For 5 years, I trusted Dr. Whitmore with my health. Every 6 months, I sat in his chair and believed him when he said I needed fillings. I paid thousands of dollars in co-pays. I endured pain, sensitivity, and anxiety. I thought my teeth were falling apart, that I was failing at basic self-care. I was wrong. My teeth were fine. Dr. Whitmore drilled them anyway, for money. I looked up from my paper, directly at him. He turned my body into a source of profit. He violated the most basic principle of healthcare: do no harm. And he did it systematically, to hundreds of people, for years. When all 5 victim statements were complete, Judge Reynolds addressed Whitmore directly. "Dr. Whitmore, you were granted the privilege of a medical license, a position of trust and authority. You exploited that privilege to defraud insurance companies and harm your patients. Your actions were calculated, systematic, and continued over years despite multiple opportunities to stop. This court finds your conduct to be particularly egregious, given the vulnerability of the patient-doctor relationship." She sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison, 3 years supervised release, restitution of $4.8 million to insurance companies and patients, and a permanent ban from any healthcare-related profession. He'd be 62 when he got out, his career destroyed, his reputation obliterated, his life irrevocably changed. He was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. I watched him go and felt nothing close to satisfaction, just a hollow sense that justice, however imperfect, had been done. Outside the courthouse, Daniel and Catherine held a brief press conference. I stood to the side with Priya and the other lead plaintiffs while they explained the significance of the sentence, emphasized the importance of patient advocacy and reporting suspicious treatment, announced that the law firm was setting up a hotline for dental fraud victims across the country. A journalist asked me how I felt. I thought about it carefully. "I feel like I can finally trust a dentist again," I said. "Dr. Pham has been repairing the damage Whitmore did. It's slow, but my teeth are actually healthy now. And I know that he can't hurt anyone else. That matters more than anything." 6 months later, I'm sitting in Dr. Pham's office for a routine cleaning. Amy does the cleaning like always, gentle and thorough, chatting about her weekend plans and asking about my new apartment. When she's done, Dr. Pham comes in for the exam. She spends maybe 3 minutes looking at my teeth, checking the repairs she did on Whitmore's failed fillings, taking a few photos for the record. "Everything looks great," she says, pulling off her gloves. "No cavities, no concerns. See you in 6 months." It's the shortest dental exam I've had in 6 years. And for the first time in 6 years, I actually believe it. The case had ripple effects beyond just Whitmore's sentencing. The Oregon Board of Dentistry implemented new protocols requiring peer review of treatment plans that exceed certain thresholds. Insurance companies started using sophisticated algorithms to flag suspicious patterns in billing. The Oregon Dental Association launched an ethics training program, mandatory for all members, that included case studies based on the Whitmore case, though they didn't use his name directly. Priya got a job at a dental practice in Southeast Portland, where the lead dentist, inspired by her whistleblowing, implemented a policy of having hygienists independently flag any concerns about proposed treatment plans. She'd also been invited to speak at dental conferences about the importance of ethical practice and creating cultures where staff feel safe reporting concerns. Catherine told me that 3 other dentists in Oregon were now under investigation after patients came forward with similar stories, emboldened by our case. The pattern was disturbingly similar: aggressive treatment plans, patients with good insurance being targeted, unnecessary procedures justified by fear tactics. One case in Eugene, another in Medford, a third in Bend. The Oregon Department of Justice had created a dedicated dental fraud task force. I'd been contacted by a producer working on a documentary about medical fraud who wanted to feature the case. I'd declined, feeling like I'd already given enough of myself to the public narrative. But I'd agreed to participate in an educational video for dental patients, explaining warning signs of potential fraud and encouraging second opinions. "If something feels wrong, trust that instinct," I'd said to the camera. "Get a second opinion. Ask to see the x-rays. Ask questions. Your dentist should welcome that, not resist it. And if they get defensive or try to rush you into treatment, that's a red flag." I leave the office and drive home through Portland's afternoon traffic, past the Pearl District where Whitmore's practice used to be before it was shut down and the space leased to a yoga studio. I think about the 102 people in the settlement, the dozens more who came forward too late to join, but finally got validation that what happened to them was real and wrong. I think about Priya, who lost her job for trying to do the right thing and kept fighting anyway. I think about the dentists who provided expert testimony, the journalists who covered the story, the prosecutors who built the case. Justice isn't clean or simple. It doesn't undo the violation or erase the betrayal. But it's something. Whitmore is in prison. His license is gone. His reputation is destroyed. And somewhere out there are people who won't become his victims because he's been stopped. That evening, Kieran and I make dinner in our new kitchen, the bigger apartment we moved into with part of my settlement money. She's telling me about a case at work, something complex involving patent law that I don't fully understand, but like hearing about anyway. My phone buzzes with a text from Catherine. "Thought you'd want to know. 3 more dentists in Oregon are under investigation after patients came forward following our case. The board is implementing new protocols for tracking and auditing suspicious patterns. You started something important." I show the text to Kieran. She smiles. "You did good." "We did good," I correct her. "A lot of people did good." She raises her wine glass. "To doing good, then, and to the importance of second opinions." I clink my glass against hers and drink, thinking about how sometimes the smallest moment, Amy's shaking hand turning that monitor toward me, can unravel years of carefully constructed lies. How trust, once weaponized against you, can be slowly rebuilt through the actions of good people who refuse to let corruption stand unchallenged. How justice, imperfect as it is, still matters. My teeth are fine. They've been fine for a long time. And that truth, simple as it is, feels like victory. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.